You are looking at the most deadly dueling weapon in history, the French smallsword. More people have gone to their graves in duels with the French smallsword than any other dueling weapon in history, and that includes firearms. So this is a very late era sword type weapon. As metallurgy got better and we came up with stronger, lighter weight steels and better ways of creating swords, the swords got longer and the blades got narrower and narrower until eventually the swords became something like this, just really, really long needles. And at the same time, sword fighters realized that it is a much more efficient way of dispatching an opponent by doing a thrust attack than it is by doing cutting attacks. So these weapons might still have edges to them. Those edges might not run the entire length of the blade, though. It might just be that just the last few inches of the foible have really an edged blade, because we're not really trying to slice our partner. We're not going to be doing cutting attacks anymore with the French smallsword. Pretty much everything is going to be about attacking with the tip. We're really trying to do thrust attacks, and if we do any kind of wild swinging, it's only designed to scratch and just do little superficial cuts with the tip of the blade. Now, this can be a very, very effective way to fight. And in fact, you can see that in a lot of popular sword fights from movies and television shows. So I can't recommend either of these things because they're definitely R-rated, but you can see, in fact, a couple sword fights between small swords like this and larger broadswords. Perhaps the most famous fight is the final fight between Tim Roth and Liam Neeson in the film Rob Roy, in which Tim Roth wields a small sword against Liam Neeson's single-handed Claymore broadsword and pretty much absolutely destroys Liam Neeson with it. Liam Neeson's character only survives that fight through trickery and deception and kind of cheating at the end of the fight. And then a more recent example is the wonderful fight sequence between Brienne of Tarth and Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. I believe that was a highlight of the last season, or the second to last season, when the two meet up and have a wonderful practice fight between Brienne of Tarth with a two-handed broadsword and Arya Stark with her one-handed small sword needle. And again, Arya easily dispatches Brienne of Tarth with the speed, agility, and precision of the small sword. So it's an excellent weapon, even though it looks very small and unassuming. It's very precise, very quick, very lightweight. Now, I want to alert you to some differences between this and the rapiers that we were working with before, and of course the SAFD single swords that you have. So the blade now on these swords is usually going to be what's known as a musketeer blade, like this. It's really a competitive fencing practice epee blade. And this is the exact same type of blade that we have on our SAFD single sword. So if you've checked out a weapon to work with at home, it's going to have the exact same type of blade. So you'll be able to use your SAFD single sword to simulate a French small sword as well as a traditional rapier. Now, the handle looks very, very similar to a rapier, just smaller. So we still have the pedon right there, surrounding a very small ricasso right there. We still have the very small quillons, and in fact, this weapon even has a knuckle bow right here, connecting the pedon and the crossguard to the pommel right there. I have another small sword right here that does not have the knuckle bow. So this one is symmetrical and could be wielded by a right-handed or a left-handed person. This one right here is designed for a right-handed person, but could, in a pinch, be used by a left-handed person as well. And the big difference here is that small swords do have this little guard plate right above the ricasso and the pedon, which provides the hand a little bit more protection, because really we need to protect the hand from being stabbed this way from errant blades. This one looks like a heart, and this one right here is just a more generic scalloped shape right there. Both of these weapons are on rental from Rogue Steel, and Rogue Steel is manned by a wonderful blacksmith named Neil Massey, and he can create some really wonderful custom designs on these. In fact, I just saw one where the Garde plate is a spider. It looks really, really cool. Okay, so now how do we hold these things? You actually hold them just like you would a rapier. So you want to take your index and your thumb and just grab the ricasso between those two fingers, and then wrap the other three fingers around the rest of the Garde with your knuckles in line with the knuckle bow right there. So this is what it's going to look like if you're holding the weapon like this. Okay, now you do not want to hold it like a handgun. So you do not want to stick your finger in there like it's on a trigger and hold it like this. This is not an effective way of holding it. Instead, you want to pinch that ricasso, and your fingers should look approximately like that. Now you can also slide your hand down the weapon a little bit so that you can fully extend your index finger along the ricasso. And so I'm gripping with my thumb down here lower on the handle and my index finger up here higher on the ricasso. And you can swap back and forth even in the middle of a fight depending on what types of moves you're using. I often find myself here because this, I feel, and I enjoy the feel, of having a little bit more leverage for my blade work and my thrust attacks with my finger extended on the ricasso like that. So I will mostly be holding it like this, but you'll occasionally see me choke up and grip there. And the pommel should be resting right there around the ball of the hand and the wrist right there. Okay? Now, of course, you can still use an SAFT single sword to simulate the French small sword, but I'll be using these, and I'm going to be using the one with the knuckle bow so that you can better see where the true edge of my blade is, because we're actually going to be using the false edge of our blade quite a bit with this weapon. Since we're really not trying to cut, we don't care about the leverage of doing false edge cuts compared to true edge cuts, and we can now use false edge parries. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment as we go through our en garde positions for French small sword. Let's take a look. Okay, so some good news first. The en garde position for French small sword is going to be the most relaxed and comfortable of the bunch. It's the smallest as well. As we progress through the different weapons in this class, we're going to want to show the audience the differences in the fighting styles. So while single rapier tends to be very long and sunken down, and there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of different types of moves, French small sword tends to be a more upright posture with lighter, faster, and more precise movements. You can constantly think that you're being pulled upwards in your upper body. Your knees are still bent, and you're still lowering your center of gravity, but there is more of an upward inclination. Now, the feet are also in the smallest stance of all of our weapons, and my heels should really be on the edges of a small square. So when we were working on rapier and dagger last semester, we had a very large square, and now it's about half that right here for French small sword. There's still width in between the feet. There's still a little bit of depth in between the feet, but it's a much smaller stance. My knees are still bent, my hips are on line, my front toes on line, my knees on line, my shoulders are on line. My active hand is still out here because I can easily use it to bat that weapon aside, especially since there's no real worry about me cutting myself on the edge. I can use this hand to parry quite a bit in order to make openings to get in. So this front hand is going to be active for this weapon. Now, as I do footwork, I'm mainly going to be relying on advances and retreats. So retreat, advance, retreat, 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 advance, advance, advance. And later on, we're going to be learning some really fancy, fun pieces of footwork that we can use for this weapon. Now, we can do passing steps. And as we do these passing steps, we're going to call them restoration passes, named after the restoration time period that this style of fighting was popular. And so these passing steps are going to be smaller, and the body is actually going to lift up as we do these passing steps. So these are my restoration passes, and then as I finish, I sink back down into my en garde position. So I can do restoration passes coming up, and then sink back down. And then I can do retreats and advances, and it's perfectly fine to have the opposite foot forward of your dominant hand. Totally all right. We can restoration pass, we can do retreats and advances. We have access to all of these different footworks. Okay, now let's start talking about the topic of en garde positions and guards in general. So this style of fighting is really where we get our whole system of parries from. Back in the days when broadswords were popular, parries were not really a thing, and nobody had really come up with a codified system of sword fighting. Again, the person that won the fight was usually the person who was most athletic and the person that had the most practical experience in battle. But now we are starting to get fencing schools, and people are really getting down to a specific art and a specific science about the way to sword fight and the way to fence. And as a result, we get this system of parries. And we, as actors and theater artists, have retroactively applied that system to the earlier fighting styles because, number one, it's what audiences expect to see, and number two, it looks really cool. It's really neat to see fights with lots of parries and different attacks. An actual traditional historic broadsword fight might be less interesting to watch unless you're really, really good at bringing out the drama. The fights tended to be very short, not very flashy, very utilitarian. Now, I have seen some really wonderful fights choreographed in a more historic style, but it's very difficult and requires a lot of skill from the actor combatants and the fight director, especially since it involves bringing the sword closer to the face in many instances. Okay, so now we're getting into this codified system of fencing, and along with that comes a system of guard positions. And each guard position is related to a parry position, so they have the same numbers. Now, before we can get there, though, we have to introduce the two new parries, parries 6 and 8, and these are the false edge parries. So you might have been wondering when we would get to those. We've done parries 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9, but we have not done parries 6 and 8, and we've briefly touched on 1. So let's look at all of those parries together and then the related guard positions. Okay, so parry 1 is the first place our sword goes after we pull it out of its scabbard. So this is parry 1. It is a low inside parry. It's also known as the what time is it parry because it looks like we're looking at our watch. This one is still not used very much in Smallsword. If we use it very much, it'll be like we've used it before as a high beat parry 1 attack, but we're really not going to be doing 1 at all. After 1, we go to 2. This is a low outside parry right here with the true edge of the blade. Then we can go up to 3 right here, which is a high outside parry. Now, as we have gone forward in time, the angle of our parries has gotten more and more shallow. So single rapier would have the tip of the blade just above our partner's face so as not to threaten them. Smallsword now brings the blade below the face. Again, below the face, so we're not threatening the face. But now all of our blade work and our parries are going to be happening on a very, very shallow angle below the face. So parry 3 is going to be down here, and then we can do a direct parry 4. Okay, this is my high out inside line parry 4 with the true edge. Then 5, we're not going to really be doing head cuts very much at all. So then we go to 6. 6 is right here. 6 is the same as 3, except it's with the false edge right there. So I am simply taking my wrist, and instead of pronating it, I am supinating it. I'd like you to take a look at where the pommel is. It's resting right there on the top of my wrist, and I'm just extending the false edge of the blade, boom, just past my shoulder, right there. This is parry 6. So this is parry 3, this is parry 6, right there. All I'm doing is just changing the pronation. Some of you in class have already been trying to do parry 6 with some of our other weapons and not being very successful. But now we can. We have the choice between doing a true edge parry and a false edge parry. And it really just depends on where you were before that as to what one you want to do. If you have just parried 4 and you don't have a lot of time to get over there to 3 by rotating the wrist and bringing it across, you can easily just, boom, go straight from 6 to 4 and back again without changing the wrist. Now the same is true for the low lines. So here is parry 7, and if I needed to get over to the other side, I could rotate the wrist and bring it across to 2, or I could just bring it across with the false edge, and this is parry 8. So parry 7, parry 8. Parry 8 is exactly the same as parry 2, except the wrist is supinated now. Parry 2, the wrist is pronated. Parry 8, the wrist is supinated. So again, I want to show you where the pommel of the weapon is. It's resting right there on my wrist. So this is 8, 7, 8, 7, 2. All right? So those are our false edge parries. Now, there's actually 3 positions for each parry. There is the parry itself, and then there is an attack with the weapon fully extended, pointing towards that position. So here, this is parry 6. I have done a parry to my right shoulder. Here I am threatening my partner's right shoulder, fully extended. So this is the parry, this is the attack. There's a big difference, and we want to see that big difference. When you parry, your parries need to be very tight, back to the body. When you attack, they need to be fully extended. Attack, parry, attack, parry. The guard position is 25% pulled back from the attack position. So once again, attack, parry, attack, guard, parry. From this side, attack, parry, attack, guard, parry. 100% extended, 75% extended, not extended at all from the parry position. Now, every single one of the parries has an attack, a parry, and a guard position. And this is what I would like you to show me. I would like you to show me all 3 of those positions for all 6 of our parries that we're going to be focusing on. So that's parries 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. So 2, 3, and 4, and 6, 7, 8. I'm going to walk through them right now myself so that you can see them from various angles. Let's start with 2. Here's parry 2, which is a parry to my right hip. Here's attack 2, an attack to their right hip. Here's guard 2, 25% pulled back from attack 2. So parry 2, attack 2, guard 2. Now in these guard positions, I want you to notice that the weapon is going all the way across the body. It's not here, it's here. Attack, guard, parry. So that's 2. Let's take a look at 3. 3 is true edge. Parry, attack, guard. One more time. Parry, attack, guard. Now let's take a look at 4. 4 is the true edge, high, inside. Parry, attack, guard. Parry, attack, guard. Now let's look at 6. 6 is just like 3 except with the false edge. Here is the parry, the attack, the guard. Parry 6, attack 6, guard 6. Now let's go to 7. 7 is here, the golf swing parry. True edge, low, inside. Parry 7, attack 7, guard 7. Parry 7, attack 7, guard 7. And finally 8, the false edge, low, outside parry. This is parry 8, attack 8, guard 8. Parry 8, attack 8, guard 8. Those are our guard positions. Let me show them to you from another angle. Here we are from the side. Start with 2. Parry 2, attack 2, guard 2. 3, parry 3, attack 3, guard 3. 4, parry 4, attack 4, guard 4. 6, parry 6, attack 6, guard 6. 7, parry 7, attack 7, guard 7. 8, parry 8, attack 8, guard 8. Those are the positions that I would like you to please show me. Talk through them. Actually use your voice. Tell us what each position is, just like I did. Going 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Those are our guard positions. Next, we'll put in some movement. See you then.